So I'm going to go through this guided example on completing the square as a review from Unit 3. So I've got this function here, x squared minus 4x minus 32. And whenever we were completing the square in Unit 3, our goal was to take a function that was in standard form, and we wanted to convert it to vertex form. So we're basically going to deal with the x squared minus 4x minus 32. We're going to do some steps, and then our end product will be the vertex form of the same function. So on my right-hand side, I've got a list of 5 steps for completing the square. My first step says that we're going to set up for completing the square. This basically means that we're going to add in or group together our terms, and we're going to also add in some blank spots into our trinomial as well. All right, so I'm going to put my x terms together, and I'm going to leave a little spot for those blank spots that we're going to put in. All right, so I'm going to put my constant term a little bit over to the right. So whenever we're setting up completing the square, I want to make sure that I have 2 blank spots, right? One that's added in to create the trinomial, and one that's subtracted off. All right, so the reason that we add in those 2 blanks is whatever I'm adding to a function, I also have to take away in order to keep that function balanced. All right, so it's not my goal to change the function in any way. I just want to change the form of the equation that we'll see. All right, so in order to keep that function the same, whatever number I'm going to add in, I also have to subtract. And then our parentheses are always going to go around our x terms that we've grouped together and also that blank that we added on. So once we've set up for completing the square, we're going to want to calculate that term that we're going to fill in, which is b divided by 2 squared. Right. How we find our b value is looking at our original equation. Since this is in standard form, I know that my coefficients of each term are going to be my a, b, and c values. Okay. So I know my b value is -4. So I'm going to substitute that in for b. I want to simplify my fraction. So -4 divided by 2 is -2. And then I want to square -2, which gives me a +4. My third step is going to be plugging in that value that we found into our 2 blank spots. All right, so I'm just going to rewrite my function, adding in that +4 that we found. So I've added in a 4 into my trinomial that I have in parentheses, and I'm going to subtract that same value. So in completing the square and finding that b divided by 2 squared value, I end up making a perfect square trinomial inside these parentheses. Right? If you remember, our perfect square trinomial allows us to do that shortcut factoring method that gets us to the vertex form with that binomial that's squared. So my fourth step here, I want to factor my perfect square trinomial. So if I've got x squared minus 4x plus 4, I know that x squared is a perfect square, and I also know that 4 is a perfect square. Right? So when we used our factoring method, our shortcut was to take the square root of the first and last term, and then we also take the sign of the middle term. Right. So I'm going to take the square root of both of those values. The square root of x squared is x. I've got a minus 4x, so I'm going to have a minus sign in my factored form. And then the square root of 4 is 2. And I'm going to square it. All right, so all I did in this step was factored that perfect square trinomial to x minus 2 squared. And then all I'm going to do is carry down those constants that we have on the outside. My last step just says that we're going to simplify by combining like terms. Right? So I want to simplify and combine this negative 32 and negative 4 together. I'm also going to add in my function notation, which is what we started with. Right. I've got my factored trinomial here. And then negative 32 minus 4 gives me negative 36. So like I said, our end result in completing the square gets us to the vertex form of this quadratic function.